And we want to make this as interactive as possible. So if you have a question, even while we're kind of mid-panel, throw your hand up. We've been sitting for a little bit, so feel free to just shout it out or give us a holler, and we'll certainly get into what's on your mind. First and foremost, I had a couple polls of the audience. How many of you are collecting first-party data, whether it be registration, content, time spent? Okay, a good number. Great. Revenue question. Do you make more revenue from programmatic or from direct these days? Show of hand if you make more from direct. Okay, seems the tides have shifted. I want to start with a quick overview of each of our different publications' sales teams structure. Obviously, revenue driving is key, and when you have a lot of very well-paid, smart people hitting the streets talking to advertisers, you want to make sure that they're not only talking about one particular piece of your ecosystem and advertising opportunities, but across the board. So, Steph, we'll start with you.
Sure. Steph Laser, Advertising Technology at News Corp. So we have a ton of different business units. Everyone is set up a little bit differently, but the most popular is having kind of the programmatic SME who is knowledgeable on it, can go out with you on sales calls, can call directly to agency trading desks and all that kind of stuff. But we do expect our salespeople to be somewhat versatile and talking about programmatic and the strategy at their particular business unit. So that education layer continues to be important and continues to be something we need to work on.
And you double comp them, correct?
Yes, most business units do, yeah.
Okay. Dave, Pon?
Dave Pon, Vox Media. We do something similar where we've been growing the programmatic sales and SME sort of group for the past 4 years now. We also double comp, and I think it's super important to have both the direct sales feeling comfortable to sell everything that they can, whether it's branded content, display media, however their advertisers want to buy it, whether it's programmatic or direct. And then we just have the programmatic sales group and account management group who's going in both providing incremental value to these folks by giving them consultative approaches to be able to say, if you want to buy it programmatically, here's exactly how you do it, and letting our sales folks focus on what they do best, which is going to talk to brands. And so our programmatic sales team, they are both SMEs and consultants internally, but they also go talk to the ATDs, agency trading desks, and the DSPs to help evangelize our brand through that. We also double comp because.
Cool. Quick audience question. How many folks have dedicated programmatic sellers and direct sellers? And how many have moved to the SME model? Not a lot. Okay, interesting.
So we actually have sort of three teams. We have our direct sales team who own the account relationships and manage the overall account strategy. Then we have the programmatic SMEs who lay over that and are exclusively focused really on PMP deals, where we're really sort of extending that account depth, that account understanding. And then we've got a third team which is focused on working the auction, the open RTB end of the stack, and really optimizing that for the best revenue. So it's kind of a three-step model for us.
Interesting. At Watson Advertising, we do the SME model, but we also have a yield focus group, which does a lot of the optimizations and are really, DFP experts, which is a very key component of what you're looking for from a strategic perspective. So let's talk a little bit about the data. What sort of data are you collecting, and is it transparent to your reader? Let's start at the other end with Dave Smith.
Yeah, so Pandora, if you think about Pandora in our bones, we're a data company. What we do, the way we deliver personalized music is all about understanding the listener and their preferences and their habits and matching that up to the deep understanding we have about the music. So from day one, even before we were in the advertising business, we've been collecting data about our listeners. So we collect literally every interaction between us and our listeners. So So every device ID they've ever used, every time they interact with us, all the different timestamps, all the different music they've ever listened to, every ad they've ever heard, every interaction with those ads, every interaction with the music, and that gives, and all of their registration data. So the coolest asset we have from a data standpoint is that every interaction with the listener, that listener is logged in. So once I know a fact about a listener, I can deploy that fact on any device where I see them, regardless of whether I've got a device ID understanding there. So it might be in their car, it might be on their refrigerator, it might be on their Sonos device, it's likely to be on their mobile phone, but I can deploy that data once I've figured it out. So we take all of that first-party data we collect, we augment it with a bunch of third-party data. We've got connections to virtually every CRM or advertiser data platform, and we can bring that data in and then deploy it on any device where we see that listener. And so we do probably a third to 40% this year of our business will be data enhanced in some way that we're charging an explicit uplift for adding some kind of data to the delivery.
Is that CPM based traditionally?
That's almost all CPM based.
Okay. Dave, how about you?
So we do, I think there's this sort of connotation that publishers, we're very much a content business, that unless you have logged in users, you're not going to be able to collect data. And I think we sort of take the opposite approach. There's two ways that we sort of do this, which is one, being creative on the content that folks are visiting. We run a house of 8 brands, and there's lifestyle, tech, news, and so if somebody's going to Eater, which is our restaurant and review type vertical, if they're coming in looking for new restaurants in New York City, but they're living in San Francisco, you gotta imagine that they're probably coming to New York City soon. So you can go and engage the travel agencies and the airlines and that sort of, and the hotels and all that stuff. And on The Verge, for instance, which is a tech and lifestyle type brand, if you're looking for reviews on the new Samsung phone or the new Google phone, then you got to know that they're in market for a new phone. And so you can build first-party data segments like that. Of course, we augment all this with third-party data. And I think the last piece that I would encourage every publisher to do here is look at the creative that is running through and optimize for creative. So we spun up 2 years ago this thing called Creative Intelligence. We create these high-impact, high-fidelity custom advertisements, and we're able to optimize towards the user, whether they're likely to view a video, whether they're likely to complete a video view, and target those ads to them, and both provide the added value to our advertisers who are looking for that, and optimize so that we're either not wasting impressions or provide better ROI for advertisers on that side.
Very cool. Okay.
Yeah, so from a News Corp perspective, beyond advertising and just how we look at our users overall is the idea of identity, being able to identify that user across all of our different brands. So we're able to collect data from the Dow Jones properties and cross it with data from Realtor.com. So for example, if someone is reading a lot of content on MarketWatch or a Dow Jones property about mortgages, we can assume also, kind of from a content perspective, pushing them towards Realtor.com as their main location to look for homes. And then associating all of those interactions, including like beyond just content consumption, because we do content consumption and we do natural language processing for all of our different articles, but we also we'll pull like interactions with widgets, interactions with different things on the page, dwell time, all things like that, and then linking all of that information to a singular ID. I think from a data perspective, at least as a yield optimization person, the thing I'm most excited right now about is being able to tie user value to our unique ID. So looking at all of our, how people bid on certain users and being able to identify our high value users versus the users that are most loyal and come back and forth, and adjust our advertising strategy towards how different parties monetize on our sites.
How do you determine who's high value and who isn't?
So you can take, well, if you use a header bidding container, you can take the logs. So, right, the logs will tell you exactly what people are bidding from all the different exchanges that you have in your header bidding solution. You can collect that up. You can currently, for Google, they will give you log level data for everybody except AdWords demand. I think we should all together talk to Google about, hey, we want the log level data for AdWords demand, because I believe if we put enough pressure on them, they'll eventually.
I'm in on
You're
that.
in that?
Yes.
You're in on that? Okay. Everybody get in on this with me, okay? Because it's a hard conversation.
Quick poll question. How many people are frustrated with Google and stuck with DFP? Not as many as people. Everybody's afraid of the big G. All right. I mean, certainly a challenge for us.
Yeah. So being able to get that data and then apply machine learning to it is super strong for us overall from a yield strategy.
And how much of your paywall plays into kind of audience management? You know, they're paying you for a certain level of experience as well. Like, how carefully do you have to tread around that?
Totally. So we have to tread very carefully around that. So Wall Street Journal, first and foremost, the thing that matters the most is their subscribers, how they relate to their user. Giving a good advertising experience is the most important thing for them. Delivering ads to the right person at the right time, contextually targeted, because if it's not right, you can really alienate those subscribers and upset them. So really strict on the site. But because of this, the user is so valuable and so premium, and it makes a lot of the conversations that we have around programmatic and like what actually looks like good measurement and good ads that you should put on the Wall Street Journal. We have a lot of conversations about that. But yeah, it's the user value aspect, and the flexible paywall is something we're currently exploring, and how we can tie the data that we're collecting for user value against that.
Very interesting. Dave S., you have a ton of registration data. And one of the things when we were chatting on our prep call, you were saying you have kind of like two paths there. So you share a little bit about how you are looking at that and ways you're, the logged in paying user versus the non.
Yeah. So
user.
so Pandora. I don't know how many Pandora listeners we got out there. Yes. Okay, so how many? Just quick survey. How many of you are aware that we now have a premium subscription product that's fully on demand? All right, that's maybe half to a third of the folks. So we now have 3 tiers of service. We've got the ad-supported service, which is free, requires a registration. What do we get? We get age, gender, home zip code, and an email address in that registration wall. But then you can step up to the $5 a month service, which is essentially that same radio service but without ads. Or you can step up to the premium service, $10-ish a month, that's fully on demand. And so we don't actually use, unlike some of our competitors, we don't use the data from those premium services. If you step up into those premium paid subscriptions, we're not using your data to market you elsewhere. We're not doing anything else with it. We're focused on the ad-supported listener from a data perspective. And frankly, that's 75-ish million users a month, maybe 150-ish million users over the course of a year. So that generates a fair bit of data for us. And we use that. That's the pool of data that we use to deliver ads on our site, that we use to provide data into the programmatic pipes when we're doing private marketplace deals. We use that data to do 2 or 3 things. So we use that directly provided registration data. We've also got a data science team. I've got about I think I'm up to 12 ad-focused data scientists who do nothing but mine our data and try and figure out what kinds of additional things can we learn and understand about our listeners. So things like ethnicity, household income, political leaning, between the combination of location data, device data, and music listening data, we can get very accurately inferred segments on that. And then we leverage that data both for our own platform and increasingly with our strategic advertising partners. We will, in the right relationship, allow them to access some of that data and use it programmatically off the platform as well.
So speaking of off-property data sales, is that something you feel like will be growing for you at Pandora?
It'll definitely be growing. We're being very cautious about it. So, we have a risk. We have our direct on-platform price points tend to be 2 to 3x the market price. And so we don't want to create a big opportunity for an advertiser to take our data and go pursue that same listener
You'll get
elsewhere.
commoditized to a certain
exactly.
extent.
So we've got a deep relationship with an advertiser and that spend level is continuously growing, we're open to saying, okay, you can augment that, you can take that data off platform, but that on-platform revenue has to continue to grow. And by the way, you're going to pay us a little take on the data you're using off-platform as well.
Nice. What about you, Dave Pond? Are you selling data off property yet?
Yeah, it's similar for us. Where the relationship is right and the spend level feels good, and it depends what sort of data. I mean, if you want to come to Vox Media, you're paying for the premium audience and the contextual alignment as well. And so there's some value in selling the data off platform where it makes sense. If we've got a campaign that's done so well and they want to take those learnings and apply those learnings off platform, that we'll discuss that. And we've had a lot of success with that with a couple other advertisers. We also are careful about commoditizing what the user looks like on Vox Media and across the web, and it's something that you need to be cognizant about.
So you hold back a little bit of the super premium stuff for yourself kind of thing?
I don't think it's necessarily holding back the super premium stuff. I think it's just making sure that the advertiser, because we can control as a publisher the experience, right? And so if you're just giving this user away for them to unleash their advertising against all the users across Vox Media without coming through us, and we lose control, and frankly, that's where a lot of the quality control and the premium experience comes from.
So do you tie an off-property data sale to an on-site sale?
Yeah, absolutely. We tie.
So your data's like not in a live ramp marketplace or something like that?
It's not.
Okay.
We do a lot of, and we've had discussions with some advertisers who are interested in this and doing the advertising performance and campaign performance and using those learnings and applying them off platform. So saying you saw this ad and you were in market for an iPhone, you maybe bought one, and now the next thing you want to do is go upgrade to something else, which is sort of interesting. And the biggest thing that we'll always be protective of is the Vox Media user and the audience that we see on our site.
Gotcha. Steph, how about you?
Yeah, so pretty similar to what everybody's saying. We're first and foremost most concerned about user experience and making sure that our data is safe. So with that, we make sure that most of the time a significant media sale is attached to any releasing of data to a partner to use programmatically. That spend commit has to be pretty massive, and we have to have the proper roadblocks in place for them to be able to use that in the future. But yeah.
Great. One of the things we just started at Watson Advertising is actually letting our weather effects triggering be out in the wild to a certain extent, just to drive additional scale. How many publishers selling their data off property through a marketplace and don't require an on-site spend? Nobody. Okay. Interesting.
I was going to say that.
Sell our data, but we do typically. Hi, I'm Medora from Edmunds. We do sell our data, off the marketplace, but typically to get the level of granularity that advertisers want, they do have to have a level of on-site spend with us. So we do offer very basic, like lookalike. So using our data to model off to find other users. But if you want our actual seed audience, you do have to have a minimum spend with us. Yeah.
Smart. Okay, great. Beyond monetization of impressions and pages, how is ad tech helping your content side? So how are you taking these audience insights and data pieces and creating more engaging content, or finding that your high-value users tend to like X, Y, and Z from a content perspective? And is that kind of playing back to the other side of the fence in the newsrooms and such?
Yeah, sure. So I would say that the data is very helpful from a custom content perspective, right? So being able to distribute it to the right person at the right time and gain more likelihood of a click is really strong for us. And yeah, I mean the whole user value idea ties back a lot into audience acquisition strategies. So we push that to our audience development teams at our different business units. So Yeah, I think just the more data you have, the more you can know and understand your particular users, and assigning that to an identity will help you to make decisions beyond just advertising, but also for content.
And I would imagine for a company the size of Dow Jones, do you have a pretty large data analytics team there? What sort of,
Yeah, we do.
Kind of astounded that Dave has 12 data scientists. I'm super jealous about that.
Yeah,
Not
quite
since they're
12.
super hard to find as well, and,
Yeah.
and usually not very inexpensive.
Yeah, not 12, but we're working on it. Yeah, to be honest, News Corp has always been a legacy a legacy kind of newspaper brand. So over the past probably 5 or 6 years, the digital first mentality has gone through kind of taking each individual company and running them through an entire consulting process, refiguring out strategy, and everybody, Dow Jones specific, like New York Post went through it a few years ago. Dow Jones specifically has just finished up with that. So yeah, the data scientist is definitely where they're hiring. They just hired a brand new SVP of ad tech, so someone who's specifically focused on the functionality of advertising technology on their sites, which I think is really strong. So yeah, everything's on the up and up, and we have we're focused on where we need to be for advertising. Great.
We'll just go down the line. Dave, what do you think?
I agree. I think data is very integral to that whole process of both finding the right user and brand for marrying the audience and the brand messaging. I think from our side, we started and built our own CMS that incorporates our high impact and high fidelity advertising from the beginning, which has been really great. And so the standard units don't live through our CMS, but a lot of what we have built with Concert, who's their sister company, we partner with NBCU, a few other folks, and are able to distribute these units across them. It all sort of lives and has been built off of what our CMS is, and so we're able to capture data around which audience is seeing them and who is going to be the best next audience to see these sort of both ads and content. I think the next iteration of that from an advertising side is take those learnings and apply them to branded content, which we spun up Vox Creative, and we're investing heavily in the branded content workshops that I think a lot of folks are aspiring to break into that market. And I think finding the right audience and distributing both from content distribution and advertising distribution perspective, that you need to find the right audience and take those learnings from what you've learned with the voices of your editors who have been good at this for years and years before we started doing this, and apply those learnings to the distribution of your branded content to make sure that your audience doesn't feel like they're getting pitched something.
Right. I think it's one of the things Amy was talking about is storytelling, and that's ultimately what brings people to your experiences, and then kind of what you can do with it on site once that happens.
So, I mean, we're inherently leveraging the data to serve the right song to the right person. But what's interesting, I think the most interesting thing we're doing with the data from a content and to a certain extent bleeding over into the ad perspective, we have an interesting situation in that our average session is 45 minutes to an hour. And so we've got a long engagement with the listener during that period. And so one of the decisions we have to, and it's an audio stream kind of environment. There's a lot of visual interaction, but the primary experience is an audio stream. And so the key question for us, as much as which ad to serve, is when is the right time to serve an ad? And so you could pick, in between any track. Obviously, we don't shove an ad in the middle of a track, but we could pick in between any track that, okay, maybe this is a good time to serve an ad. And so the coolest tech we've built in the last couple of years is something we call Chronos, which actually calls back to our server in between every track or as the track is about to end and says, hey, for this listener in this moment, given how they've been interacting with the site, what music they're listening to, what their ad tolerance is this a good time to serve them an audio ad? And so we make that decision ourselves using the data about that individual and what their ad tolerance is and how they interact with ads. How likely are they, if we serve them an ad, to get pissed off and leave? How likely are they to shorten a session up if we serve them too many ads? Are they ad tolerant? Are they just sitting back and listening, in which case maybe we can throw them a few more ads? Or are they actively bouncing around and trying to figure out what they want to do, in which case maybe an ad would piss them off? So we actively manage that decision of when's the right time to serve an ad, in addition to using all the data to decide which ad to serve.
And I would imagine that nice little "Are you still listening?" Button that comes up certainly helps drive a lot of that information.
That's our video source.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, cool. Let's talk a little bit about video. There's a panel earlier talking about, like, is it worth based on what you're, putting into it from a content creation perspective? Are you selling video programmatically? And if so, what's been kind of the early learnings there? Is it worth it? Do you find that it erodes your direct video sales, especially if you do have some scale issues? So I'll start with you, Steph.
Yeah. So News Corp does not have a ton of video content. The most video content is on Dow Jones, which sells out directly all the time, so it's not even available programmatically. So if you're buying it programmatically, it's not real.
Even on mobile? Even on mobile?
Yeah, even on mobile. Yeah,
Great.
they completely sell out of everything that they have. But our other business units are definitely selling video programmatically. My whole thing with video and content creation is branded video content seems to do well and seems to do the best, especially because the way most people consume video content right now is very lazily through social media outlets and things like that, through platforms. So the monetization opportunity is so much smaller than it is on site. Getting users to actually deeply engage with something on site is difficult to do, and therefore, getting them to suffer through a 30-second pre-roll ad, which I think should be outlawed. They should all be 10 or 15 seconds. Getting them to suffer through that to actually get to the content can sometimes be difficult. But yeah, I mean, video, obviously, the CPMs are significantly higher, so we do our best to create as much video content as we can as cost effectively as possible.
Right, but it needs to feel organic to your experience, right? It's just putting it out there for revenue's sake is not the wisest.
Right.
Dave, how about you? What's your video strategy look like?
Yeah, I would agree. I think we're a content-first company, and we're going to program our video. I think we've seen a lot of success across Facebook, Twitter, the Twitter Live, those sort of shows. And YouTube is obviously this great distribution platform that the economics are not always the easiest to monetize, but the answer is that we're always going to be a content-first company, and where we sort of fill that gap is on the branded content side, and with the Vox Creative piece, we're going to create interesting and compelling videos for both the things that you want to know as a consumer, but also there's ways that you can hook in brands that feel very organic to those videos and distribute them across all the social platforms. So from a purely pre-roll perspective, we sell pre-roll on a programmatic guaranteed basis only. I think that's there's so much insatiable demand that you don't need to do anything more than that except for unless you've got billions of impressions a month, which it would be hard pressed to find anybody.
Right,
and so we found that just getting the video out there to the right consumers where you drive, and there's long tail monetization options that are more effective and better for the consumer than just slapping a 15, 30-second pre-roll in front of it.
Great. Quick sidebar question for you. So you had mentioned concert. Do you want to just give everybody kind of a 2-minute spiel on what concert is and how you're involved in it?
Yeah, sure. So I run the programmatic operations for Concert, which is it's a high-fidelity advertising opportunity for a small, concerted group of publishers, including NBC. There's Entrepreneur. And so we're distributing our custom-created ad units, and that could be video, it could be branded content distribution vehicle. And the idea being that a consumer has a right to a good viewing experience on the web, and making sure that when they scroll down the page that they're not interrupted with some expanding, terrible ad unit. It's going to feel right for the content. It's going to be custom tailored. And for an advertiser, there's the creative intelligence piece where we're optimizing for all things, whether it's we do a couple different videos in different units, and making sure that we're hitting the right audience with the right creative at the right time, which I think is sort of not necessarily an overplayed promise, but I think the proliferation of brand safety being at the forefront of conversations, I think that this is a big promise for both the branded content distribution, just display advertising in general, because I think we're all sort of sick of the 720 by 90s and 300 by 250s that are antiquated.
The whole banner blindness issue.
Sure.
Dave, since you're mostly a music and entertainment site, how is video played into your
so video is
monetization?
an interesting thing for us. You mentioned the "Are you still listening?" timeout. That's the primary driver of our video content. So you hit that. So if you are on Pandora and you're listening for somewhere between an hour and 3 hours, depending back to that whole strategy of when's the right time to serve an ad, somewhere in that zone, and you haven't interacted with the app, we'll flash you. We'll pause the music after a track and we'll say, hey, are you still there? And when you click into that, you get to watch a video in order to get back to get the music started again. It's a 15-second enforced, not a 30 enforced. You can watch.
Thank you.
You can watch long form, but you can also cut it at 15. Now we also serve some video in the place, so that generates a fair volume of video impressions. It's interesting because we're not a video site. There is no video content on Pandora today. We're looking at some different ways to bring music video and artist interviews and those sorts of things onto the site that might create some pre-roll opportunities. But today it's a different thing than the experience. We have very high viewability on those videos because the listener generally wants to get back to the music. But the place we're going with video is into more incentivized video opportunities. So, for example, if you want to skip more songs on the station on a station than you're allotted in a given hour, you need to stop and watch a video in order to release more skips. If you want to replay a song, you can now watch a video and get the ability to replay a song. And those two things are tied directly to our content costs. So we generate a little extra ad revenue from the video in exchange for giving the listener a deeper experience, a richer experience.
But it's interesting you're giving a value exchange, whereas most of us
Exactly.
are just like, please watch.
Yeah. No, and the value exchange is, so we have another product called sponsored listening, which is an even deeper value exchange opportunity. So for an advertiser that wants a deep experience, they can, they get a little bit of what we call triggers on the site. So some display ads that say, hey, Procter & Gamble would like to, what would it be? Pampers would like to invite you to hour of ad-free listening. Mm-hmm. You come in, you watch the video, you get a persistent display for the next hour that's associated every time you're in looking at the screen, but you get no ads you get no audio ads during the hour, and then at the end you get a bumper, you get a little, hey, Pampers wants to thank you for, hope you enjoyed your experience. They take a bunch of different forms. That product sells at crazy CPMs.
I would imagine.
Because it's a sort of a holistic engagement with
Like
the listener.
high double digits?
Let's go 3 digits high.
Good to know. Wouldn't that be amazing, seeing $100 plus CPM? Yeah. Steph, did you have something to add to that, or?
Well, yeah. When you were like, oh, it is a value exchange, I was like, well, my value exchange is that I'm giving them content at the end of them watching the pre-roll. I think the other thing, 2 other things I wanted to touch on with video at News Corp, which completely slipped my mind, because I was thinking about our masthead brands, is we do own 2 video companies. One, a video advertising company called Unruly that specializes in outstream video, and they're doing a lot of really cool stuff with data and being able to, they have a panel and being able to, ask questions directly to their users and lookalike model off of that, which, specifically emotional targeting, which, how does this video make you feel? How does this message make you feel? Which has been a cool product for them. And then the second company that we also own is called Storyful. And Storyful basically takes user-generated content and it verifies it. So with that, you can create some really cool custom user-generated like social media campaigns. So you could push to certain people on Facebook 3 different pieces of user-generated content and sponsored by McDonald's. And, this is how you feel when you eat a Big Mac, and it's someone, dancing and stuff like that. So those kind of campaigns are really cool, too, and a good way to be able to sell video beyond programmatic.
Excellent. Steve, how are we in time? Should we start
We should
questions?
go to Q&A, yeah.
Okay. We are open for questions. Anybody have anything they'd like to ask our very esteemed programmatic panel?
This guy.
There in the back.
Hang on.
Hear more about your respective remnant stacks, which you guys have
So yeah. We'll start with don't ever call it remnant again, because it's not remnant.
Okay.
It's unsold inventory.
Yeah, unsold inventory, remnant in terms of what's going to open exchange networks, et cetera. What does that remnant stack look like for you? If it's header bidding, what container you're using, if it's an SSP, who that party is, and so on.
Yeah, so each of our business units has, they have their number. They have to meet their number. Their monetization is theirs and their own. That being said, we try to set up guidelines and strategy at corporate for, you guys should move forward with this. So my opinion and what I push them all into doing is making sure that you stay with the principles of supply and demand. Everything competes on a head-to-head basis. The person that has the highest bid actually wins. So with that, we have a strategic investment in AppNexus. We use prebid.js across all of our different properties. In that prebid.js stack, there is a single instance of AppNexus that is the News Corp seat, where we can transact programmatically across all of our different DFP instances, because each business unit has a completely different ad stack. We have that. We also have forecasting engines so that we can forecast across multiple different systems as well, and we use YieldX's log level data to be able to look at that, because same thing, everybody's on different DMPs, everybody's on different CMSs, so really the role at corporate is to take those singular ad stacks that people feel most comfortable with and figure out ways to tie them all together so that we can do things together.
How about you, Dave? Are you guys, or either of the Daves, are you guys on a singular ad stack, or do you kind of have the?
We have a singular ad stack across all of our house of brands. I too hate the term remnant. So sorry. Just because I think that we came from a place where programmatic advertising was this crap at the bottom of the barrel, and we've seen that change.
Now it's automation.
Now it's automation, right? And so the way that our stack is set up, we have our 100% roadblock sponsorships, and then we have our direct sales, whether that's a private marketplace, a programmatic guaranteed, a direct reservation. Then we have at the bottom the open exchange, where is primarily international advertising in that sort of advertising, and we use pre-bid as well because it gives us the controls and levers. We're a fast-moving engineering company where we need to have an open source container that allows us to remove, change, and quickly iterate.
Yeah, I'm gonna nerd out.
We geek out. So Steph and I geek out on this all the time.
Yeah, like pre-bid, at least for me, like the opportunities, if you have a really awesome engineering team, are endless, right? So it's open source. You can build what you want in. You can pull the data out. You can change the way the ad stack is set up in DFP. You can adjust bids. You can do like anything that you want to do is your control, and it's just a matter of making sure you have an engineering team that's set up to think revenue, which is very difficult for, because most engineers hate ads. So it becomes a conversation that if you can get your engineering department excited about revenue, yeah, it's completely changes the game.
So quick audience poll, how many people are using like an index or a traditional wrapper versus prebid.js? So hands up for prebid.
Party on.
Most seems like most people are in a container still. Okay.
I think we can also talk about it during the roundtable. There's advantages to those out of the box and managed service containers. I think it's just we have an engineering heavy company, and we're lucky enough to have engineers who are on board with making as much money as possible and doing it the right way. And so that was the right solution for both of us, I think.
It all comes down to talent. Dave, anything to add on that?
I think this is probably the one area where we're a little behind. We've got first off we have display, but we really only have 2 display units. I've got one unit in the music viewer, the music player, that can be either a 300 by 250 or a 1x1 responsive, and I can flip it depending on where the demand is. And then I've got an interstitial, and that's it. So remnant to me really is it's all the same product. There's some question about who the audience is. So the demand tends to focus on the high value audience. What I'm pushing into AdX in our case, and we're exclusively AdX at this point. No header bidding, because our engineers are not quite as flexible as I wish they were on some of that. And we've got a lot of legacy tech in the way we push ads to the app. We do have our own in-house performance team still that's doing, God bless them, doing DR advertising, somewhere in between our premium sales stack and what we're getting out of the open auction. So they're pretty good at monetizing. They have an incredible state-of-the-art tool set from about 1995. It's called Excel that they use to do the optimizations. Poor SOTs have absolutely no tech whatsoever, but they do a pretty good job of driving performance because we have pretty high-performing media. Their problem is they're subject to the ebbs and flows of the direct sales team. So, as we move into the holiday season, their inventory goes down, and then what flows after them down to the AdX open auction also goes down. So. Not as much there
Stephanie,
as I
you
would like.
mentioned in passing the flexible paywall. Do I take it you mean by that you're going to be identifying high-value users from an advertising basis and actually make the paywall flexible for them so you can advertise to them more without them being paying subscribers?
Yes.
Okay. Are you doing that yet? Are you doing that yet?
No.
Okay.
It's an ongoing conversation. We have to figure out the way to do it strategically in a way that values the user and makes them feel comfortable, and also converts them into subscribers because that's where they're most valuable.
I sort of wanted to draft off of that the header bidding. We're about a year, 2 years into header bidding, and I'm curious if you have any reflections, anyone, all of you on the panel, on what advantages you've seen from header bidding so far in terms of the kinds of insights that you're getting into the bidding process, and if you really are seeing increased CPMs as a result of using it.
I have so many feelings about header bidding.
Well, we used to have whole panels on it.
Yeah, we do. So header bidding, years ago before I was at News Corp, when Prebid.js didn't have any premium SSPs in it, I worked at a small startup where I convinced a lot of them to let us not contribute the adapters, but at least test them on our site. So we were able to build a lot of the adapters that, after a little while, ended up contributed to Prebid.js. There is, so my entire career, like when I first started, actually back in the days when I was at the Daily Mail, we used to talk on the programmatic team about how we needed the dream, and the dream was to get everybody competing on a head-to-head basis, like having everybody put in a bid, and how can we get closer to that? So every single programmatic conversation was like, how do we get closer to this? And when I heard about header bidding, I was so psyched because I was like, oh, this is it. This is how we get closer to the dream. This is how we get closer to everybody competing on a head-to-head basis. The revenue yield is just so significant between putting pressure on AdX and between actually letting all of your different SSPs like be available to everyone. I think that for right now, there is some of that yield that exists because some DSPs like are bidding themselves up across multiple different platforms, which will eventually be something that continues to go down. Like it was a revenue lift that if you hit header bidding head on, first started it, and you were a first mover there, you would have gained the revenue, you would have gotten the revenue gains from that. But as time goes on, that, the supply side optimization is really important on the buy side and helps them to drive the prices down, unfortunately for us. But yeah, there's so many different things you have to look at. I could talk about this for hours, but you have to make sure your metrics are up. You have to make sure you're measuring them every single day. You have to make sure your user experience is still good. You have to make sure your page is still loading. Client side right now is kind of, for me at least, is the highest revenue. You can do server side, but most of the time the loss in cookie makes your CPMs go down. So if you test one person in, say, EBDA in Google, and then you test one person, which I don't even know what Google's doing over there, so whatever, and then you test them through a header bidding solution, typically you will see more revenue. But you also have to take into consideration the added latency and how does that affect revenue as well. So as long as you can get that data and you can look at that data and you can analyze that data, you're going to be good at header bidding. But if you're just like a person who's like, I'm going to throw it up on the page and see what happens, that's probably not best. You should definitely make sure that you have the infrastructure set up to make sure that you're doing it successfully while respecting the user experience at the same time.
Inventory management is key when you put header bidding into play.
Yeah.
Has anybody been playing with first price?
Yeah.
How long do you think the buy side's going to take to shift, and will they shift totally?
Yeah.
I think they will. I think in a world where, yeah, I know. We could talk about this for hours, but I think that the buy side was seeing their second price and first price bids are closing, and because of a competitive SSP and header bidding market anyway, and as publishers should always go and try to get as close to the brands and negotiate the price and make them feel comfortable with their yield curve and be transparent about that stuff. And as those come closer, the only way to actually transact through these pipes, these automation pipes that have been set in place, is sort of through a first price auction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to just accelerate fast and furiously. There's certain DSPs that are kind of dragging their feet a little bit on it, but look, and the agency side too. I think they're going to evolve and kind of get hip to it because at the end of the day, the agencies don't have anywhere to run if the publishers aren't.
I think back to the inventory management and really what I think of as provisioning inventory to different demand sources. I think that's where the ability to provision the really attractive demand in different ways is what's going to drive that first price behavior.
Agreed.
Well, clearly, if you guys have a lot to talk about programmatic, they do too. So that's going to be a hell of a round table. Amanda, panel, thanks. That was great. Thank you very much.